All right, Dad, so we're back again, and we're going to talk about the B35 Bonanza, the 1950 Bonanza. So where we last had left, you had purchased it, and we've got some pictures here of when the gentleman flew the airplane out. And so here we have just some pictures kind of laid out of, you know, the tri-pacer. There's the old cockpit of the tri-pacer, so that's what you flew to Mississippi in, was that thing, huh? Good Lord. And there's the hangar on Olinger Airstrip when you first purchased it. And so I see you got a couple pictures here of where you've got the Bonanza next to the tri-pacer. So anyway, so tell us the story about how you got rid of the tri-pacer and then onto this Bonanza. And
well, first off, the guy from New York flew it out, and we flew into Olinger. Then you're going to take me for a kind of a checkout ride in it. This was in 1969, in March of '69. So I took off with him, and I was in the right seat, and he was flying around showing me how the thing went. And the guy was really a good pilot, because as he came in to land at Olinger and leave the plane with me, he just cut the power off about 4 miles away and was able to bring it all into a landing without touching the throttle. I was amazed. I then got in it and got a little bit of time in it and flew him over to Vancouver, where he picked up an airline to go back. So then I brought the Bonanza back to Olinger. Still had the tri-pacer there, and so I started playing around with it and learned how to fly the Bonanza. Got checked out by the local flight instructors and so forth, and we I think it wasn't until almost end of April when I finally sold the tri-pacer, and I sold it for $2,500, mainly because when the guy did a punch test on the fabric, it punched yellow, and so he said, "I'm going to only pay $2,500." I said, "Okay," and so that's where the tri-pacer ended off with. Meanwhile, started flying a Bonanza around all over the place. Took some friends, and we got checked out in it, and the radio in the Bonanza was that old.
So this was actually in the Bonanza, huh?
Yeah, it was, and it's got kind of a dial and pray VOR, and I can show you how the thing changes here. You know, when you dial it out, to and from, and all that, and then here's where the channels are for the. That's to turn it on, and you can. It's only got 90 channel radio. Of course, nowadays they're all 360, but back then it was 90 channels. And but I thought that was pretty good stuff compared to what I had in the tri-pacer. So off we go. One of my first trips I took with a bunch of people was up to Abbotsford. I think that was in about a year or two later. We flew up, me and 3 guys from work, flew into Abbotsford, which they have that air show up in Canada. I've been there quite a few times since then. It was quite a good show, and that's the color the Bonanza was when I first bought it. Finally decided the paint job was kind of crappy, so I was going to get it repainted. The neighbor had paint remover and all that, a paint factory, and so we got all the paint off. And I asked Charlene, what color do you like the new Bonanza painted? And she said, well, I kind of like it gold brown and beige. And I said, well, okay. Anyway, then I got the paint and hired a guy to come out, and they painted the thing. And well, it ended up being probably the ugliest airplane ever flown. And that happens to be Jeff getting on the airplane. I think it's one of his first flights to someplace. And but that time we had a 4th of July thing we went to down at Cottage Grove in the Bonanza at night. Flew down there, used to go there for lunch, and got down there, watched the fireworks, and I did have some time in the Bonanza at night, and we flew back and watched the fireworks from 4,000 feet. Not near as good from 4,000 feet as it is on the ground, but in any case, flying into Crest from
Olinger.
Yeah, Olinger, from the west, which is about basically it's a one-way strip. And it has 2 lights on the strip, and the rest of them reflectors, so it's pretty tricky getting in there, but we did make it in okay for that trip. And then about the following year, we took that Bonanza to Greenland, Mississippi, where we visited Charlene's folks, and we went via Boise, Salt Lake City, stopped, met some friends, took off from there to Goodland, Kansas again. Been to Goodland, Kansas a number of times, and some of them quite memorable. From there on into Muskogee, Oklahoma, and then I had to stop in Arkansas for a night because of the weather, and then on into Greenville, and then back through via Baton Rouge and El Paso, Tucson, up to Las Vegas, Reno, and then home. And,
so kind of a similar route you took with the Tri-Pacer, huh?
Yeah, pretty similar. And the Bonanza had a lot longer range, and about a few months after that, we flew down non-stop with that airplane, which had 2 wing tanks on it. Wingtip tanks had 15 gallons each, so gave it a total of 70 gallons, and burning about 8.5 gallons an hour gave you quite a range. So we could fly from Olinger non-stop to Los Angeles and go to Disneyland and all that, which we did 1 year, and then came back. The airplane was sort of ugly, and we've been up to the San Juans in it, all over the Northwest. We flew it over to Sun River one Christmas in 1970. Had a great time, good weather, and been going to Sun River many times since then in different airplanes. So it was a great flying airplane, lots of range, and it was basically a 4-passenger thing, and that old radio got me where I had to go.
And what did that have for an engine in it? E185?
Yeah, they had the E185, 200 horse, and well, a little underpowered, but you know, it was very efficient and could handle the weather pretty good. And
no, this is pre-IFR instrument rating, correct?
Oh yeah. The airplane wasn't IFR qualified, not with that radio anyway.
Yeah, it's a nice radio.
Yeah. So in one of my last flights of my Bonanza before I sold it, I took it to Oregon City because I was considering buying a new radio, and then I was there standing outside watching this guy in a P-12 trying to land at Oregon City, and he would land one way and take off and miss the runway and didn't look too good. And
tell everybody what a P-12 is.
Oh, that's a tail dragger, like a Taylor craft. It's a cloth-covered small airplane.
So like a non-tricycle geared Tri-Pacer.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, he finally decided he was must land it and watch him. He landed about 7/8 down the runway going east. He put full throttle like he wanted to go around again, but he kept it on the ground, and he just went through the fence at the end of the runway, crashed through that, went through about another 30 feet and through another fence, a barbed wire fence, went through that. There was another fence about 100 feet past that. He went through that third fence, and then about maybe 60 feet past that third fence, there was a huge stump, hit it head on, the wings folded up around the stump, and I thought the guy was dead. I didn't want to go over and see him. And it turned out that guy was a mechanic who was working on that airplane and restoring it for the owner. And he sure did a great job restoring that airplane because it left him a pile of junk.
and he survived it?
Yeah, he got banged up a little bit, but he walked away. So.
God, I bet the owner was real impressed.
Yeah, well, the guy must have froze on the throttle. Is the only thing I can think of, because it didn't back off on it. It went full throttle right into the stump, and it's unbelievable. That was one of my last flights in the old Bonanza, but it was a great little airplane. But my neighbors started getting twin airplanes, so I'm thinking, well, I'm getting left behind here.
When there was a bunch of twins on this 2,000 grass runway with a big gigantic swath of trees at one end.
That's right. There was a Baron and 2 310s, and so I figured, well, maybe I ought to move up. So my neighbor, who was flying a 210 at the time, said, "Hey, come on, fly with me. We'll go down to California and look at an airplane down there." So that's when we hopped in his 210 and flew down there. A guy scared me to death, but we got down there and landed at an airport, and there was this 1955 310 sitting there with a gold tail. And I looked at it, and thought, gee, that's pretty nice. And the guy only wanted $11,500 for it. I thought, that's a pretty good deal for a twin. And so we got back home and then I called him up and said, yeah, I kind of like to buy that plane. And so then I ended up with the 310. In the meantime, I had to sell the Bonanza, the kind of an ugly paint job. I was kind of worried about it. I finally found a lady in Hillsboro who said, yeah, she'd buy it, and she paid me $7,500 for it. And but the thing was so ugly, she put a broomstick on the tail, and it became famous.
Yeah, she actually painted a broomstick on the tail.
That's it.
Because I can remember seeing that airplane at Hillsboro Airport, like years and years later, and you saying, that is that old Bonanza. And it was unrecognizable because, as you guys can all see, that is definitely the ugliest paint job ever. I mean, it is horrendous. I mean, sorry, Dad, but you've got to blame it on the wife. It always works out as long as she's not watching.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so you never really had anything scary. I mean, you flew, what did you have total time? It looks like in the logbook there, what, about 400 hours?
Yeah.
When you stepped up to the 310 or something like that?
Yeah, by the time I got into the 310, let's see. Keep going.
And this is in the early 70s, obviously.
Yeah, early 70s. And I'm home up to about 315, 324. Still going. Yeah, 374 hours in that total time, including the tri-pacer time.
And you had no twin time whatsoever when you bought the 310?
No.
Oh. Well, there's so many stories on this airplane, we could do numerous chapters on just the 310 alone.
Yeah, well, yes,
because now you're getting into a long-term airplane. I mean, the tri-pacer and the Bonanza here, you only had for like a year and a half each or something like that, or whatever it was.
2 years. 2 years for the Bonanza, 2.5 years. Well, I think I sold it in, let me see if I can find the date on here when I sold it. 1972, about mid-June of 72, yeah. And then there was, lady had it and flew it around and had fun in the thing. So, yeah.
Well, so there's your B35. So we've got some uneventful stuff. The next chapters, we're going to get into some eventful things. So that'll be pretty interesting. So we'll come back and we'll start talking about this 1955 Cessna 310. And there's a little picture of it here, and we'll get into that. And there's been numerous memories in that particular airplane, that's for sure. So we'll share a bunch of those stories with you. All right.
Yep.
Sayonara.